Dear Three Wise Men, this year I've been very good. I've tried to help a lot of people, I've made a lot of videos, and I've behaved really well. I don't know whether it's because in previous years I behaved really badly, or because you've got a whole business selling socks and underwear, but this year I'd really like you to give me something from the list for crying out loud, okay?
Well, what? Not now?
Oh, Carlos, sorry, it's just that I was lost in thought with Christmas coming up.
Alright then, we need to record. He's been here waiting for a good 15 minutes already.
Okay, let's go. Don't worry, let's just get right to it.
With Christmas approaching, a time for gifts, family, and overall well-being, and especially with my upcoming double fatherhood, which surely by the time you see this video will no longer be upcoming but already present, the time has finally come for me to show you something truly useful.
Today I'm going to show you the tool.
How? What, you're going to show them the tool?
I mean, today we're going to talk about the tool that I keep on the boat. Well, the tools, the most useful tools, and how they can be a truly endless source of possible Christmas gifts to ask the Three Wise Men for.
Or Santa Claus.
Or Santa Claus. Well then, that's it. Let's get to it. Greetings sailors, and welcome to this new episode of the Low Cost Sailor. In today's episode we're going to take a little tour of the most useful utensils and tools, and also some of the most useless ones that I carry on the boat, and that of course for the most part are completely low cost. That said, they're very practical at the same time. Tools and implements that are always convenient to have on a boat. Well, many of them also for the house or for a motorhome or anywhere. Having tools is never a bad idea, and they can also serve as a source of inspiration for our partners, family members, or for ourselves when we write our letter to the Three Wise Men.
Or to Santa Claus.
Or to Santa Claus, well, or on my birthday, which is just around the corner. And we're going to focus especially on the ones that are simple to give as gifts, because, let's be honest, how many of us end up receiving the very same gifts year after year at Christmas? The classic socks, cologne, and all those sets of underwear or panties are everywhere, and even so, we're still longing for something that truly excites us, something that's both genuinely useful and truly exciting. I don't mean to say I don't like being given underwear, socks, clothes, and things like that, because in the end, if they're not going to get it right, it's better that they give you the things you need but don't like going out to buy.
No, clothes truly aren't a gift. 3 kings, 3 wise men, 3 wise men. Oh my god, 3 wise men. Clothes just aren't really a gift, 3 wise men. I think Melkor is the one who says, oh, a sweater. No, clothes really aren't a gift. And that's basically it. Now that I've finally let out my childhood traumas, you can go ahead and continue.
Anyway, to try to fix this and make sure that this Christmas they give us something we'll actually be excited about, we're going to do a quick rundown of some useful and affordable things Santa Claus or the Three Wise Men can bring us. Use this to convince your partners to sit with you on the couch and watch this episode. And whenever something comes up that interests you and gets you excited, give them a discreet elbow nudge or a couple of quick taps like this, the way my wife does with me. I'll do the same when I watch this episode with Lara, don't worry. So let's get started. And the very first source of inspiration for these useful and practical gifts, I hope, has been our earlier episodes. A full year of episodes is already just about to be completed. What times those were when we first started. I hadn't even played anything yet. Well, it's been a year in which we've presented a whole bunch of inventions and ideas, and among them, some gadgets and tools that are simple to give as gifts. This is kind of the classic TV-style recap of everything that's been happening over the last year. It all began with the remote control for the boat's windlass, something fairly simple and genuinely useful for under 15. But of course, ever since that pretty modest first episode, we've been showing quite a few more things. Things, for instance, to set up our very own Wi-Fi on the boat, or to build a proper ladder to climb all the way to the top of the mast. There's also a sewing machine. It could make a really good Christmas gift. Or the piles of cameras and alarms that we've installed thanks to that Wi-Fi, and how much security they can provide for our boats. And above all, everything we've built and are still going to build around the Raspberry Pi, which, if you don't have one yet, might be a very good time for that subtle nudge. And if it happens to you like it does to me, that you've stayed with the 3, it could be a nod to a sponsor who might want to gift us the version 4. And among those things, we've also shown some simple and useful gadgets, like, for example, the auxiliary bilge pump and its corresponding power bank. the power bank that we've put to plenty of different uses throughout our episodes, or even the cheapest AIS transmitter available on the market. And let's not forget our wax rings for the toilet, the head, which can very easily and inexpensively save your boat from sinking.
And also the Chinese tape from that very same episode.
And what about the mini scuba tanks for emergency fixes? Well, with my current experience, I would recommend the 1 liter one more than the half-liter one. It ends up being a bit too little for me, and maybe even the 2-liter one that Smako has just released, and that they've offered to send us one to test. We'll see if they send it to us and how well it works. Even if you've behaved very, very well, a folding bike for the boat, whether it's our Xiaomi from the last episode, or the boomerang that Alvaro had on the Cordo Maltese, or anyone that fits your budget and the space on your boat, you'll see how useful a bike will be, and how great it'll be for losing those extra holiday pounds. And while we're at it, some of the gadgets we saw on our boat tour that make life a bit more comfortable on board, like the mini dehumidifier, the one I've got here has been running non-stop for 4 years, or a classic car vacuum, or, my personal favorite, the hammock to stretch out and read on deck.
But wasn't the unicorn actually your personal favorite?
Well, I don't consider the unicorn to be a comfort item, I classify it as a safety item.
I think it's in the new decree. The unicorn, I mean.
You have to carry one. When you go more than 12 miles, you have to carry an inflatable unicorn for emergency situations. Well, anyway, the main objective of this episode was to talk about tools, and tools for any DIY enthusiast, whether it's nautical DIY. A shout out to Sergey from Bricolaje Nautico.
Hi, and warm greetings to everyone over at the Low Cost Sailor team.
Or just regular DIY. They always make a really great gift. I think the best way to really dive into this stuff is for us to take a look at what I carry around in my bag. Oh no, that's what fashion influencers usually do. What I really meant was what I keep in my little tool corner. And since we're already here, let's go ahead and uncover the little secrets of my tool nook.
How mysterious. I'm so nervous.
Well, it's a little bit tight on space in here, isn't it? And obviously the very first thing here is what actually gives this compartment its name, the tools. A multi-purpose toolbox with a whole bunch of sockets. This is an absolute must-have on the boat. You really do have to have this. This one is kind of crappy because it actually came with the boat itself, but honestly, it's still more than enough. I've never really understood that obsession with having a really good tool. It's fine to have it at home, but on the boat, what you really need is a variety of tools, basically to have a bit of everything. It doesn't have to be the best, because you're not going to be using it 10,000 times, and so you bring the one from home like I do. I have good tools at home, and when I have to do something, I bring the one from home. But when I have an emergency, well, here I've got some pliers, essential Allen keys, a bunch of screwdriver bits, several screwdrivers, even more screwdrivers, and a few small screwdrivers. These ones are from Lidl. I believe that this is quite important because sometimes you have to fit it into certain spots to tighten and loosen fairly tight screws. A mixed toolkit. Something truly essential that every single one of you should have on your boat, and if you don't have one, then go and buy one. Let's continue on. Most of this comes from Aliexpress because it's a really good source, for example, when you're buying stainless steel screws and nuts. When what you want is a properly assorted set, then it's Aliexpress. When you need a specific screw, you can simply go to the hardware store right below your house, which is honestly the best option. With the very same idea, copper washers work just as well for me when I change the car's oil as they do when I replace them in the connecting gaskets of the boat's pumps, in the engine, and so on.
When do you change the car's oil? But that's done at the shop.
You do that at home, like you do pretty much everything. It's really not complicated enough that you actually have to go to a shop. You can go to a shop. I'm not trying to discredit the mechanics who do it wonderfully, and well, there are all kinds of people, but I hardly ever go to the shop. I've already said on occasion that no professional has come onto this boat to do anything, because I haven't felt the need, not because they don't do it well. More stainless steel screws and lag screws, because with all of this there's always some kind of emergency or some little contraption you need to build, especially if you're anything like me. Here we're already getting started with tools, although just before that, I recently bought this at Lidl, some stainless steel sheets and a few different sets of screws. I think this costs about $2 for each kit. When I recently started making the mount for the rudder position sensor, for example, I found that I was a bit short on this stuff on the boat, and then you go to Lidl and damn, once again it's that whole thing where you don't really need to have the very best. This here is basically the very cheapest multimeter you can get in the world. I think this one costs around €2 or something like that on Aliexpress. So if you want to measure voltage with real millivolt level precision, then you should definitely buy a good one. But if you just want to check continuity or whether the voltage has dropped, this one works great for me. Let's continue. I really love this one. Lidl, what a tool, what a tool, what an absolutely amazing tool this is. This is Lidl's very inexpensive cordless Dremel, and here I've got quite a few different accessories. And then you'll see around there that I have a bunch of additional accessories. Those I already bought on Aliexpress.
And what does this do?
Well, this pretty much does just about everything. Here you've got it for drilling, you've got cutting discs to cut metal or to cut basically anything at all. And if you bring it a little bit closer, that green Tupperware container next to the big container, that smaller one, well, here's a more traditional accessory kit, you see? Well, to sand with it, and also for more cutting discs, for example for polishing and things like that, for when you've got a stain on stainless steel, or to clean carburetors, and discs for cutting wood. You've got these ones here for polishing. This is like the ultimate multi-tool. And the great thing for a boat, above all, is that you charge it and it runs on a battery, so you can use it anywhere without messing with cables, even when you're sailing. In an emergency, you could definitely use it to cut a shroud cable, or even a padlock for example, if it got jammed and you can't manage to open some hatch.
Snap your fingers, the table gets filled with stuff and they won't be able to see you anymore.
Alright then, and is it going to get cleaned like this?
Yeah, snap your fingers.
See? There it is. Oh, it has disappeared completely. Now we've got some space. Where could it have ended up at? Let's keep going.
You sure have a lot of gadgets.
I'm telling you, don't let me go to Lidl. When we go to Lidl, my wife buys all the yogurt there is, and I start wandering over to the tools section and think, damn, I need some polishing discs for the drill and polishing compound for the stainless steel candlesticks and stuff. When they've got it, from Lidl too, well, I don't know how much it cost, but since it was free, I took it home. Obviously that's what it is, a drill. This one is 220V, the older one. I don't have it at home, and here I of course have the Lidl cordless drill. But we'll probably devote an episode to that one, because I have a lot of uses for it. We'll continue. From Lidl, it's a magnet with an extendable antenna. This is absolutely essential too. This is for when you drop something out there in the middle of the holmokes and need to retrieve it. Well, for retrieving things. And if you need to search, I got carried away here too. I don't know if I needed it, but if you have to look behind the engine somewhere, well, for mechanics, this, a small mirror.
My goodness, all of this, just like you said, is absolutely essential to carry around.
Well, to be specific, this might not be absolutely essential, but this I would definitely buy for sure. Well, I did buy it. We'll keep going with parts. This is also from Aliexpress. Different kinds of rubber gaskets for when you lose one, for example, for scuba diving gear. Engine gaskets for when you change a filter and lose the gasket. It also practically costs nothing. Tired of coiling cables and taping them up all the time? The day finally came when I switched over to better quality. I've got connectors, what I call hermaphrodites, that let you connect two into the same spot and things like that. And the worst part is, I still haven't even pulled out the toolbox. This box originally came along with the boat. It's got sets of drill bits, magnets, and all kinds of different clamps. One piece in particular, for example, is an adapter that my father made for me on the lathe for whenever the Morse cable breaks. With this, I can take the cable, cut it, splice it, and have it continue working.
The cable? What thing? The Morse, like Morse code.
The Morse, you have it on the boat and you don't even realize that's what it's called. I don't want to say anything at all about your nautical skills. The Morse is the control you move to make the engine speed up or stop, and to go in reverse or forward.
Is that called a Morse?
Yes. Wrenches, the pipe wrenches. More sets of wrenches come out. Open-end wrenches, clamps, a spark plug wrench for the outboard motor, some pulley, some part like that. Well, a whole bunch of things. We really are going to need to do just a little bit of magic to make this disappear from right here, and then be able to close up the box. So, once again, you'll definitely see me again at some point. Let's see, more stuff. All kinds of bonding substances, greases, silicones, and so on. Useful larger size tools. A rivet gun too. It basically doesn't cost much of anything at Bric-A-Mart. This is essential. You can get a bigger one, but this is the cheapest one they sell at Bric-A-Mart, and it's meant for cutting cables. You should always carry one, because if one day you lose the mast, for example, and it ends up hanging from one of the shrouds, you may need to cut the shroud so it sinks down to the bottom of the sea, instead of staying there and banging against the hull, making a hole, and sending you to the bottom of the sea. A soldering iron, an oil filter wrench also from Aliexpress, a pair of groove joint pliers, a good adjustable wrench, the biggest and cheapest one at Bric-A-Mart, a hammer, more screws, nuts, and all that crap, the cable box. We're not going to get into it, but there are cables here of everything you can imagine. Stainless steel washers, also another batch from Aliexpress, the spare parts box, belts, the spare fuel pump, for example. Basically the essential spare parts to carry on a boat. There also needs to be a silicone gun. I think we finally reached the very end. The bag of hoses in all sizes and colors so you can fix something or do an emergency transfer. And lastly, even more cables, which no, I really didn't think there were just a few. And that's it. This was the compartment. Now we simply have to put it all back in. Maybe we can record a, what do you call this, time lapse. Well, still, I've already told you that I'm kind of a tool addict and not everything really fits in that space anymore, so I've got a few more things spread out in some other corners. For example, my own workbench, when I actually have to get things done, is basically made up of this board that my dad built, with this support that's put together using a clamp, okay? Where we take it, set it right here, and this just goes like this, okay? Here I have my work area, and right here I add my bench vise, and on top of that, with the light that I have right above, well, here I can weld and work, right next to the sink too, just in case I need water or anything. And this, my little workshop, so handy.
This is when my wife watches the videos and she says, David is so handy, so very handy.
It's just that I'm actually really handy, truly handy. Let's keep looking at the tools. We haven't fully finished yet. We've got our Chinese level that includes a ruler, a bubble level for different axes, a tape measure so we can measure things properly, and the real reason I bought it, which is that it has a laser cross. Okay, I'm not entirely sure if you can really see the laser light here, but you can use this to check whether the boat's mast is actually perfectly straight. This laser beam like this.
Fuck, but this is awesome.
If I step back just a bit more, you could see it more clearly, but if you look closely, it always stays right in the center. So this one, on the one hand, and this one is also really great, a laser distance meter, more of a luxury item than something you really need. You turn it on, it marks a point for you, you see the laser dot exactly where it's going to measure, and it measures the distance with millimeter precision. That's it, it measured a distance of 37.3 centimeters. Really useful around the house for measuring things during renovations for that kind of stuff. This would already fall under the category of a useless impulse buy. 10 euros. With this, you put one of these reflective strips on anything that spins, you press the button and it tells you a laser dot comes out and it measures the rotational speed. I used it back then because when they sold me the boat, the tachometer was there but the needle wasn't moving. And then I said to myself, well, it must be broken or something. No, it's that the tachometer doesn't even have a cable connected, it's basically fake. Until I built myself another kind of homemade tachometer. So first I bought this to check the RPM range on the Morse position that matched different RPM ranges, to know whether they were overdoing it, revving up the engine. It's honestly not really the most useful thing I bought so far. Anyway, moving on, here's yet another camera. This camera cost me 8 euros. I actually bought a couple of them for work, and then I said, damn, I'm going to buy one for myself because for the price point. A Wi-Fi camera that you can connect to your phone and monitor. It also lets you record and it comes with a mount so you can attach it somewhere and then swivel it around and point it in basically any direction you want. The main idea behind this camera for me is that I've got a small diesel leak in the engine, so the plan is to place it there while the engine is running and then keep repositioning it around to different spots to see if I can spot the drip and figure out where the leak is coming from. And now that we're going to have a couple of kids, by the time you see this they'll already be here, my plan is to make a small playpen for them in the forward cabin and put this camera up front. Then from the tablet while I'm sailing, I can keep an eye on them, make sure they're safe and stay calm. Another camera, super cheap, just $8. The tool that's probably going to surprise you the most out of all the tools I've got, a hairdryer, just the absolute cheapest one. With the hairdryer, for example, in a place where things are constantly getting wet all the time. Today, now that it's pouring rain, I've discovered about half a dozen leaks to dry the cushions that have gotten totally soaked, to dry things out, or even sometimes when you make a table like this you need a hairdryer, or some kind of source of hot air to form the curves in the vinyl so it shrinks like this and fits those curves. If you want to go to an even more extreme level of heat, the Lidl gas soldering iron, another one of my impulse buys at Lidl, but this one is actually genuinely really useful. It runs on gas. It also came with a gas refill bottle, and it's a soldering iron with several tips in different sizes. It also works as a stripper for scraping and removing things. I've got some aluminum here too for soldering. If you take this part off, it basically acts like a blowtorch, as you can see. If you put this attachment on it, it basically works like a heat gun. You can see how it shrinks the heat shrink tubing without actually putting out an open flame. And lastly, if you put the soldering tips on it, then it works really well for soldering. I'm gonna let it cool down a little bit here. Of course, some kind of mini tool like this with multiple heads and all of that, which you normally carry hanging on your belt when you're out and about. Special format bits, for example, because there are some security screws on the boat that you need to open using this, or sometimes it's for some kind of weird device, you know? The gear. Really important. A sewing kit with lots of things and all that. But the most useful thing in there is a sewing awl that's usually used for leather work, and it works really well with the super strong needles it comes with for making repairs to the sails. And once we've gone over all the tools, gadgets, and that sort of stuff, as a complement to all the mandatory safety equipment required by the Directorate General of the Merchant Marine, I've got a few safety items of my own, or ones that I personally think are really useful to have and carry on the boat. In the lighting section, of course, you've got all kinds of flashlights. Everything from more traditional style flashlights like this one to this one, my fully submersible flashlight. I also use it underwater, but outside the water it shines like an absolute beast. Okay, look.
Damn, it's seriously very powerful.
Or for example, this power bank, which as a flashlight or as a recording light also lights up extremely well.
That one is made for YouTubers, the so-called YouTuber flashlight.
You could absolutely call this a YouTuber flashlight, of course. That well-known power bank we're always talking about, the one that can start the boat and do all that sort of stuff. Well, it turns out it also works as a flashlight too. And even if you have to speed off to the hospital with the horn fully blaring because your wife is just about to give birth, you've got it. You always have to have flashlights for everything. And speaking of police lights, a blacklight flashlight. This blacklight is ideal for things like, for example, looking for defects in the shell code, water leaks to detect lime scale, and where the water is getting in at a given moment. Blacklight, just like what you see in CSI, and when it comes to signaling our position, it's so dangerous that it actually even comes with a lock. A super ultra high-powered green laser. I don't use it much because it can burn things. Let's see, this one actually needs to be opened using the key. The laser pointer. Wow, that's amazing.
But that ends up creating a really massive amount.
Even underwater. And if you genuinely want to draw a whole lot of attention, you could go ahead and put that small sparkly thing on it. This Christmas, you'll be the king of the party. Never ever point this at anyone's eyes under any circumstances. But really essential on a boat, zip ties, a whole box of adhesives, all kinds of duct tape, tape for repairing sails, padded tape, double-sided tape, glues, instant glues for making an emergency fix on anything that might come loose or for protecting anything on the boat. Finally, a large 150 milliliter syringe, which is absolutely perfect for removing that very last little bit of water left down in the bilge that the pump simply can't quite get out. Or for instance, my fridge, when it's running, has a little spot where the water that seeps out just stays there, so it's really perfect for getting water out of all kinds of places. And in that same spirit, it's always a really good idea to keep a pump on board the boat, whether it's to inflate the Zodiac, the board, or even the winged rescue unicorn. You can choose a decathlon type pump, an electric one, or better yet, a double action manual pump. If you're still using those foot pumps to inflate the Zodiac, the kind where you do it like this, just forget it completely. With this type of pump, like the ones you can get from Decathlon for example, every time you move it up and down like this, you're putting in 8 liters of air each time. For just 10 euros at Decathlon, you'll be able to inflate pretty much anything in no time at all. If you pay close attention and buy one with the inflation inlet and the deflation inlet clearly separated, you can hook up a hose and then it becomes a real water pump. You can move 8 liters of water with every single stroke. Please, number 10, don't ever inflate a Zodiac again with one of those foot-operated pumps. We more or less already have everything we need. We'd basically just be missing the emergency electronics, right? When you run into an electrical problem and everything goes down, and you're left without the plotter without any of that, then when it really comes down to it, we all have access to the simplest solution available nowadays, which isn't the paper charts from the Directorate General of the Merchant Marine, but your phone. With its built-in GPS and nautical charts, the Blackview UV9900 Pro, we'll put the link somewhere. It's seriously tough with a really huge amount of battery life, it's fully waterproof, it works down to 40 degrees, and what I like most about it, and the reason I bought it, is the thermal camera.
Yeah.
It's just that if I go over there, I can see that you can see the things that the camera picks up that generate heat, and that besides being used to see if someone has coronavirus, it's also to check whether your power cables are properly sized, because you simply pointed at them and you're going to see where all the cables run, and you're going to see in red the cables that are heating up because they're not properly sized or because there's excessive consumption. And a thermal camera can see in complete and total darkness. That is, if you have a man overboard and you need to find him quickly, you can point the thermal camera in the dark. Anything that radiates heat, which would be the person who's in the water at that moment, you're going to see as a little red dot in the middle of a zoom plane. Super useful for that kind of thing, a divine little toy, and this one is indestructible.
The worst part is I'll never replace it because it's basically indestructible. But anyway, the only thing you can't replace with your phone is the depth sounder. If the depth sounder breaks, you no longer know the depth and you can't just sneak into any place.
For that, an emergency fish finder depth sounder. That is, it tells you the depth, and at the same time it tells you if there are fish, and it costs $30. If one day your depth sounder breaks and you need an emergency one, you put this on the transom, you connect it, and you know the depth at all times, and it keeps updating. Or if you're heading to a place where you don't really have any reference points for anchoring, you can go ahead with the Zodiac and measure the depth out there, even with the waves. Now, nautical stuff. This costs $30, and the cheapest depth sounder you can find out there will cost $300. With all this stuff we've been telling you, I think we're done with this section. I guess Carlos, with his magic, has already fixed this, because it's absolutely pouring rain outside and you can hear it raining just about everywhere. The wind is really up, the boat is moving around, so today the conclusions will simply stay in here. This episode ended up being a bit like a home shopping show, but since I'm showing this whole pile of things I carry that could make really good gifts, it sort of looks like I've got a Chinese bazaar on board, more or less. I've got a ton of stuff, and this is really only the tip of the iceberg. Also, and this is for my wife and close family, you can clearly see that I'm very easy to please. Just about any tool makes me happy, or really any kind of Chinese gadget. It definitely doesn't all have to be socks. Thank you very much, Navigantes. I truly hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, please give us a like, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell so you'll get notifications every time there's a new video from us. You have all the links to the things that appear in our video in the description or on our website www.thelowcostsailor.com. See you again in a couple of weeks, a month, or maybe two in a completely brand new episode of Low Cost Sailing.